Mae Parker knew the stage lights of the Starlight Revue like the back of her hand. Or, more accurately, she knew the shadows just beyond the blinding glare. For 5 years, she'd stood in those shadows, a backup singer, a human echo blending her voice with others perfectly in tune, but never truly seen. Her voice was strong, clear, and full of a soulful ache, but her confidence, when it came to standing alone, was as fragile as spun glass. Las Vegas, in the late 1960s, was a dazzling, booming place, a whirlwind of neon and dreams, and Lily Mae was a small, almost invisible part of its grand show. She loved the music, the rhythm that pulsed through the city's veins, the way a melody could lift you even when life felt heavy. But she had a secret, a dream. She kept locked away in the quiet corners of her heart. To be a lead singer. To stand in the center of the stage, not just behind someone else, and let her voice soar naked and true. But the thought alone made her stomach churn. The spotlight felt like a giant hungry eye ready to devour her. The audience a faceless, judgmental mass. It wasn't just stage fright. It was a deep primal terror that froze her vocal cords and turned her knees to jelly. She'd tried once, years ago, at a small club back in her hometown, and the memory of her voice cracking, of the awkward silence that followed, still haunted her. It was why she was content, or so she told herself, to be a backup singer, a vital but safe cog in the musical machine. The Starlight Revue was a big deal. High energy, flashy, with a star-led singer, Brenda Sterling, who had a voice like pure brass and the stage presence of a queen. Brenda was everything Lily Mae wasn't. Bold, confident, utterly unafraid. Lily Mae admired her deeply, even as she envied her fearlessness. Then came the morning that changed everything. It started with a cough, then a whisper, then a full-blown rumor rippling through the dressing rooms like wildfire. Brenda was sick, really sick, a nasty bout of laryngitis complicated by a fierce flu. She wouldn't be able to perform for at least a week, maybe 2. Panic rippled through the cast and crew. The show was sold out for weeks. The Starlight Revue couldn't just cancel. Mr. Henderson, the director, a man whose face usually looked like it was carved from granite, paced the rehearsal hall, his brow furrowed deeper than usual. He was a stickler for perfection, a true showman who believed the audience deserved nothing less than dazzling. He looked at the backup singers, then at the understudies, then back at the backups. His gaze lingered on Lily Mae for a moment, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. She quickly looked down, pretending to adjust her microphone, hoping to disappear. "All right, listen up." Mr. Henderson's voice boomed, cutting through the anxious chatter. "Brenda's out. It's a tough break, but the show must go on. We have a new plan." Lily Mae's heart hammered against her ribs. Who would fill Brenda's formidable shoes? She knew it wouldn't be her. "For the first act," Mr. Henderson continued, "we'll adjust a few numbers, rely more on the ensemble, but for the big new number, the showstopper, Midnight Serenade." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the room again. "We need something special, something fresh, and we need a powerful voice to carry that solo." Lily Mae held her breath. Midnight Serenade was the song everyone was talking about. It was a bluesy, soulful ballad that built to an incredible soaring vocal solo in the middle, a moment designed to take the audience's breath away. Brenda had poured her heart into it, and it was her signature moment in the show. Mr. Henderson's gaze landed on Lily Mae again, this time with a definitive weight. He pointed a finger, not at the experienced understudy, but directly at her. "Lily Mae," he announced, his voice firm, "you're stepping up. You'll sing the solo in Midnight Serenade." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The air rushed out of the room, leaving Lily Mae gasping even though she hadn't moved. Her fellow backup singers gasped, a mix of surprise, and she thought a little envy. Sarah, her best friend and fellow backup singer, standing next to her, nudged her gently. "Lily, that's amazing," she whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. But Lily Mae didn't feel amazing. She felt the cold dread creeping through her veins, turning her insides to ice. The stage, the monster she usually hid from, was suddenly demanding she step directly into its gaping maw. The solo, the most exposed, vulnerable moment in the entire show, was hers. Me? The word barely escaped her lips. A tiny, reedy sound, utterly unlike the strong voice she possessed. "Yes, you, Mr. Henderson," said his voice, leaving no room for argument. "I've heard you. You have the range, the tone. You just need to find the courage. Rehearsal for Midnight Serenade. In 1 hour. Don't be late." He turned and strode out of the hall, leaving Lily Mae standing frozen in the sudden silence, the weight of his words pressing down on her like a physical force. 1 hour. 1 hour, until she had to try and climb the mountain of that solo, a mountain she already knew she couldn't conquer. The echo of her fear, long suppressed, roared to life, deafening her to everything else. This wasn't a dream come true. It was a nightmare unfolding in the brightest, most terrifying lights of Las Vegas. 1 hour turned into a torment of nervous energy. Lily Mae tried to calm herself, to tell herself this was an opportunity, a chance, but the internal tremor wouldn't stop. Her hands shook, her palms were slick with sweat, and a knot of dread had tightened itself in her stomach, making it hard to breathe. When the time came, she walked back into the rehearsal hall, her steps heavy as if she were wading through thick mud. The musicians were already there, tuning their instruments. Mr. Henderson stood by the piano, looking impatient. Sarah gave her an encouraging smile, but it felt miles away. "All right, Lily Mae," Mr. Henderson said, clapping his hands. "Let's run Midnight Serenade from the top. We'll get to your solo section and we can work through it." The music started, rich and melancholic. Lily Mae sang the harmony parts, her voice blending automatically with the other backup singers. It was familiar territory, safe ground. But as the song progressed, inching closer to that moment, her throat tightened. The lyrics seemed to mock her, reminding her of the vulnerability required. The orchestra swelled. Brenda's usual lead vocal filled the space. Then the music began to fade, creating a dramatic pause. This was it, her moment. The notes were etched in her mind, perfect and clear. But when she opened her mouth, nothing came out. Her mind raced. "Sing, Lily." She looked at Mr. Henderson, whose eyebrows were already starting to knit together in a frown. She saw the musicians waiting, their instruments poised. The silence stretched, excruciating and loud. Finally, a tiny strangled sound escaped her lips, barely a whisper. It was flat, wavering completely off-key. Her face burned with shame. Mr. Henderson sighed. "Again, Lily Mae." From the top of the bridge, she tried. And tried again. Each attempt was worse than the last. Her voice cracked, her pitch wavered, and her breath control deserted her. The soulful ballad turned into a pathetic squeak. The more she tried, the more her fear solidified into a physical block, constricting her chest, her throat, her very being. After about 20 minutes of this torture, Mr. Henderson called a halt. "Lily Mae, what is going on?" he asked, his voice sharp with frustration. "You know this song. I've heard you in the background. You have the voice. Why are you holding back?" I don't know," she mumbled, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her cheeks were still hot. She felt small, exposed. "I can't." "You can't?" he repeated, incredulous. "You have to. This show opens in 3 days. Brenda's out indefinitely. This is your chance, Lily Mae. Do you want it or not?" She wanted it more than anything, but the wanting felt like a cruel joke, a taunt from a universe that knew her deepest fear and was now forcing her to confront it. The pressure was immense. Not just from Mr. Henderson, but from herself. From the dream she'd nursed for so long. "Give me a few more hours," she pleaded, her voice barely audible. "I'll practice. I promise." Mr. Henderson looked at her, his expression a mix of skepticism and fading patience. "All right," he said, rubbing his temples. "We'll run the full show later tonight, but I need you to have that solo down by then. If you can't deliver, I'll have to find someone else." "We don't have time for this." The threat hung in the air, cold and definitive. Someone else. The word stung, but a part of her felt a perverse relief. Maybe that was for the best. Maybe she wasn't meant for this. The musicians dispersed their murmurs, sounding like judgment. Sarah stayed behind, putting a comforting hand on Lily Mae's arm. "Don't listen to him, Lily. You can do this. Just breathe. You're brilliant." But Lily Mae just shook her head, tears pricking at her eyes. "I'm not, Sarah. I'm a coward. I can't even open my mouth without feeling like I'm going to collapse." She grabbed her bag, needing to escape. The air in the hall felt heavy, suffocating. She mumbled a goodbye to Sarah and practically ran out of the theater, past the bustling badged crew, past the bright lights of the Strip, until she was on the street blinking. Against the harsh afternoon sun, she just needed to be alone. The weight of expectation, her own and everyone else's, was crushing her. She felt like a fraud, undeserving of the opportunity and utterly terribly lost. Lily Mae walked aimlessly at first, then with purpose. She needed to escape the glittering, demanding chaos of the Strip, the constant thrum of slot machines and the blare of music. She craved quiet. A place where the air wasn't thick with ambition and the blinding lights wouldn't remind her of the spotlight she dreaded. She found herself wandering down a side street, away from the main drag. The buildings here were older, less ostentatious, a mix of small shops and residential apartments. She spotted a diner tucked away at the end of the block, its neon sign the Lucky Spoon, flickering with a friendly old-fashioned charm. It looked like a place time had forgotten, a small island of calm in the midst of Vegas's relentless energy. Perfect. She pushed open the door and the comforting aroma of coffee, fried food, and something vaguely sweet, pies probably, embraced her. The diner was quiet, only a few patrons scattered around, lost in their own thoughts or hushed conversations. A waitress with kind eyes and a worn apron wiped down the counter. Lily Mae slid into a booth near the back by the window, hoping to be as inconspicuous as possible. She ordered a black coffee, needing the caffeine to cut through the fog of despair that had settled over her. She stared out the window, watching the last rays of sunlight fade, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Quiet hum of the refrigerator, the clink of dishes, the low murmur of conversation. It was a balm to her jangled nerves. A few minutes later, the door chimed, announcing a new arrival. Lily Mae barely registered it, her mind still replaying the disastrous rehearsal, the sound of her own pathetic voice. She picked at a loose thread on the bygone seat, feeling utterly defeated. Then a voice, low, warm, with a distinct, almost melodic drawl. It wasn't loud, but it carried a rich, velvety sound that seemed to wrap itself around the air. "Just a quiet booth tonight, Betty," the voice said to the waitress. "Need a little piece from the circus out there?" Lily Mae involuntarily looked up. The man who had spoken was sitting a few booths away, his back mostly to her. He was dressed simply in dark slacks and a light jacket, not the flashy suits she was used to seeing on performers. He had dark hair, styled in a familiar, almost iconic way, and even from this angle she could see the distinct shape of his sideburns. He wore dark sunglasses, even indoors, which struck her as a little odd, but then again this was Vegas. Everyone had their quirks. He settled into the booth, pulled out a newspaper and unfolded it. The waitress Betty chuckled warmly. "Trouble finding a quiet corner, Mr. Presley?" she asked, her voice hushed, as if it were a secret. Lily Mae froze. "Mr. Presley?" Her breath caught in her throat. Could it be here? In this little diner? Her heart began to pound, a different kind of thrumming than before, a mix of disbelief and awe. She carefully, subtly tried to get a better look. He didn't directly answer Betty, just gave a low chuckle that sent a shiver down Lily Mae's spine. His voice was even more resonant than she'd imagined, deeper, richer, with that unmistakable southern warmth. "Just need a moment to think," he said. taking a sip from the coffee Betty had placed in front of him. "This town, it never stops, does it? Always on, always demanding." Lily Mae watched him surreptitiously. He truly did seem to be seeking quiet. He wasn't drawing attention to himself, wasn't trying to be seen. He just sat there flipping through his newspaper, a surprisingly ordinary man with an extraordinarily familiar presence. She kept telling herself, it couldn't be, not the Elvis Presley, here, now. But the voice, the hair, the quiet charisma, it was all too real then. As if sensing her gaze, he shifted slightly. He didn't look directly at her, but his eyes, hidden behind the dark lenses, seemed to sweep over her booth for a fleeting second. He paused, his head tilted just a fraction. He didn't say anything, but Lily Mae felt a curious weight, as if he had noticed her distress even from a distance. He went back to his newspaper, seemingly absorbed, but Lily Mae couldn't shake the feeling that he was aware of her presence. And perhaps her silent struggle, the encounter wasn't real. Dreamlike? Here she was, terrified of a single solo, and across the room was a man who commanded stages larger than life, a voice that could shake the world. The irony was lost on her. The velvet voice in the twilight of the diner, unknown to him, had already given her a moment of fleeting wonder, a tiny crack in the wall of her despair. The next few days were a blur of escalating panic and futile attempts at practice. Lily Mae found herself drawn back to the Lucky Spoon diner each evening, became her sanctuary, a quiet refuge from the relentless pressure of the theater, and more often than not he was there. The man with the deep melodic voice and the dark sunglasses. She still hadn't dared to confirm her suspicion, though every fiber of her being screamed his name. Elvis, the king? She never approached him directly, nor did he overtly approach her. Their interactions were subtle, almost accidental. One evening, as she was reaching for the sugar dispenser on the counter, he moved his arm and his elbow nudged her cup, causing a ripple of coffee to slosh over the rim. "Oh, my apologies, darling," he said immediately, his voice rich with genuine concern. He quickly grabbed a napkin from the dispenser and began dabbing at the spill on the counter, even though it was barely anything. "Clumsy me. Are you all right?" Lily Mae's heart leaped into her throat. This was the closest she'd been to him, the first direct words he'd spoken to her. Up close, his presence was even more striking, a quiet power that hummed just beneath the surface. His eyes behind the dark lenses felt incredibly observant. "Oh, it's fine, sir. Really," she managed, her voice a little breathy. "No harm done." He smiled, a small, polite curve of his lips, but his eyes, even hidden, seemed to crinkle at the corners. "Still, I apologize. Sometimes my mind's a million miles away. This town can do that to a body, can't it?" He lingered for a moment, not leaving, just standing there politely as if waiting for her to speak. Lily Mae, usually so shy, felt a strange pull to open up to him. Perhaps it was his gentle demeanor or the sheer unlikelihood of the situation. He was a complete stranger, yet he exuded a comforting aura. "It certainly can," she agreed, finding a bit more courage. "It's a lot, especially if you're trying to make a living in the entertainment business." He nodded slowly, a knowing look on his face. "Ah, a performer, are we?" "What do you do?" "I'm a singer," she admitted, then quickly qualified. "A backup singer, mostly. For the Starlight Revue." "Is that so?" he said. His interest piqued. "That's a fine show, good music." "And is it going well for you, darling? You seem burdened." The question was so direct, so empathetic, that it caught Lily Mae off guard. She hadn't realized her distress was so visible. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together. "It's complicated," she confessed, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I love to sing more than anything, but there's this one thing, a solo, and I just can't seem to do it. The fear just takes over." She didn't elaborate, didn't say it was the solo, the showstopper, just a solo. But she felt the weight of it, the shame of her inability. He listened intently, his expression unreadable. behind the glasses. But his posture was open, his attention completely on her. He didn't offer immediate solutions or platitudes. When she finished, a sigh escaping her lips, he spoke, his voice thoughtful. "Fear's a funny thing, isn't it?" he mused, leaning back against the counter. "Can tie you up in knots tighter than any rope, especially when it comes to what you love. I reckon the more you care about something, the bigger the fear of messing it up becomes." He paused, then looked towards the diner's window, his gaze distant. "The stage can be a lonely place even with a crowd," he said almost to himself. "All those eyes on you, all that expectation. It can feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders." His words struck a chord deep within Lily Mae. He understood. Not just generally, but specifically, profoundly. He spoke with the quiet authority of someone who had walked that lonely path himself, someone who knew intimately the burden of 1,000 eyes. He wasn't just offering generic advice. He was speaking from a place of deep, personal experience. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Exactly, it feels impossible." He turned back to her, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. "Nothing's impossible, darling. Just feels that way sometimes. Every artist, every performer, every person who ever stepped out of their comfort zone, they know that feeling. The trick is to find a way to walk through it, not around it." He didn't offer his name, but in that moment, as the last of the Vegas twilight faded outside, Lily Mae felt a tiny spark of hope flicker within her. This stranger, this kind disciple man, saw her fear and acknowledged it without judgment. He didn't know her name or her specific struggle, but his words, gentle and wise, had already started to chip away at the edges of her overwhelming dread. The king's gentle observation had opened a door she hadn't known existed. Their conversations became a quiet ritual. Each evening, after a grueling, fruitless rehearsal, where her solo continued to falter, Lily Mae would seek refuge in the Lucky Spoon Diner. And each evening, more often than not, he would be there, a comforting, familiar presence in his usual booth. They never exchanged names, a silent agreement that seemed to deepen the intimacy of their talks. She continued to call him Sir or Mr., and he simply called her Darlin'. One night, the pressure from Mr. Henderson had been particularly crushing. He'd practically given her an ultimatum: nail the solo by tomorrow or she was out. Lily Mae arrived at the diner feeling completely shattered, tears close to the surface. She ordered her coffee, barely able to meet Betty's kind gaze. He noticed immediately. "Rough day at the office, darling?" he asked, his voice soft, almost a murmur. Lily Mae nodded, unable to speak. She slid into her usual booth, feeling the familiar weight of the unspoken words pressing on her chest. He moved to her booth, sliding in opposite her. He didn't pry, just waited patiently, his presence a steady anchor. It's too much," she finally managed, her voice cracking. "I'm a good singer, I know I am, but when the spotlight hits, when it's just me, I freeze my voice, it just goes." She gripped her coffee cup, her knuckles white. "It's this solo. It's beautiful, but it feels like a mountain I can't climb, and if I don't, I lose everything." She told him about her dream, long buried, of being a lead singer, about the times she'd tried and failed in her hometown, about how she loved the music, the feeling of harmony, but hated the feeling of being exposed alone, under scrutiny. She poured out her heart, surprised by her own candor, but feeling a strange, deep trust in this man. He listened, his eyes behind the dark glasses unwavering, his face showing a profound understanding. When she finished, a long sigh escaping her lips, he leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I know that feeling, darling," he said, his voice quiet, almost reflective. "More than you know." Paused, then began to speak, his voice weaving a story that captivated Lily Mae completely. "I was just a kid from Tupelo, Mississippi, and suddenly there were all these people looking at me." Lily Mae listened, mesmerized. She had always imagined him, Wherever he was, the famous man she suspected him to be, as fearless born for the stage. To hear him admit to such vulnerability, such fear was astonishing. "My biggest fear back then," he continued, "was that I wouldn't be good enough, that I'd disappoint him, that they'd see right through me. See, I was just a boy trying to make a name for himself. And sometimes that fear, it's a cold, hard thing. It can make you question everything you are, everything you believe you can do." He looked at her, then his gaze piercing through the dark lenses, as if he could see into her very soul. "But here's the thing, darling. True courage ain't the absence of fear. It's walking right through it, even when your knees are knocking. And your voice is shaking, it's choosing to do it anyway, because the music, the song, the message you want to share." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "The stage. It's just a space. The audience, they're just people who want to be moved. They want to feel something. They want to believe in you. They don't want to see you shine. They want to see you shine." He picked up a spoon and idly stirred his coffee. "I had to learn to take that fear, that nervous energy, and turn it into something else, to channel it like electricity, instead of let it push me, give me more juice. It took time. It took a lot of bad nights. But slowly it started to change." He looked at her again, a gentle, encouraging smile on his lips. "You love to sing? You said that's the most important thing. You gotta go back to that love. Don't sing for the spotlight, or for Mr. Henderson, or for the audience. Sing for that love. Sing for the music. Let it carry you." Lily Mae felt a warmth spread through her chest, chasing away some of the cold dread. His words resonated deep within her. A truth she had instinctively known but never dared to acknowledge. He spoke of fear, not as a weakness but as a part of the journey, something to be transformed, not conquered. His willingness to share his own past vulnerability, to admit he too had been terrified, made her feel less alone, less pathetic. "But what if I still mess up?" she whispered, the doubt still lingering. He chuckled softly. "Then you mess up, darling. Happens to the best of us, but you pick yourself up. And you try again. And the next time you'll be a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser. The greatest permanencer." He hadn't just given her advice, he had given her permission to be imperfect, to be human, to be herself. The shared fears, the unspoken names, had created a bond she hadn't anticipated, a lifeline in her sea of doubt. She still didn't know for sure who he was, but his wisdom, born of experience and empathy, was already a priceless gift. Lily Mae returned to the theater the next day with a sliver of hope, a fragile seed planted by the man in the diner. She tried his advice, focusing on the love for the music, on letting the fear become juice. The moment she stepped onto the stage, the familiar knot in her stomach tightened. Mr. Henderson was watching his patients, clearly wearing thin. She managed to get through the first few lines of the solo, but her voice still wavered, the emotional depth she knew she possessed trapped behind the wall of her anxiety. It wasn't enough. Not for Midnight Serenade, not for Mr. Henderson. "Lily Mae," he said, his voice flat. "I appreciate you trying, but we're out of time. I've called in an understudy from another show. She'll learn the solo tonight. I'm sorry you're off the solo." The words hit her like a physical blow, even though she had expected them. Part of her felt relief, a perverse freedom from the unbearable pressure, but a larger part felt a crushing disappointment, a confirmation of her deepest fears. She wasn't good enough. She would always be just a backup. Devastated, she left the theater early, the noise and bustle of backstage feeling unbearable. She walked the familiar route to the Lucky Spoon, her footsteps heavy, her mind numb. She just needed to see him, to hear his quiet wisdom, even if it couldn't change the outcome. He was there as she had hoped. He looked up as she entered, and for the first time his dark sunglasses were pushed up onto his forehead, revealing his eyes, and there it was, unmistakable, those famous, intense, mesmerizing blue eyes. The full force of his charisma, usually softened by the glasses, hit her like a wave. The hair, the jawline, the almost regal posture, there was no denying it. Now it was him, Elvis Presley, the Elvis Presley, sitting across from her in a diner booth, casually sipping coffee, looking at her with a gentle, concerned expression. Lily Mae's breath hitched. A rush of disbelief, awe, and a strange sense of unreality washed over her. She almost laughed, almost cried. He was even more handsome, more powerful in person than in pictures, but also more approachable, more human. She sat down, her mind reeling, trying to process this impossible reality. He didn't seem to notice her sudden shock, or perhaps he was used to it. He just looked at her with those knowing eyes. "Something happened, darlings," he stated, not a question, but a quiet observation. Lily Mae swallowed hard. "They took me off the solo," she confessed, the words tasting bitter. "I couldn't do it. I froze again." He nodded slowly, his gaze still holding hers. "I see. And how does that make you feel?" "Like a failure," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "Like I'll never be able to do what I love. Not really. Never be more than an echo." He reached across the table, not touching her, but his hand resting near hers, a gesture of quiet support. "Being an echo ain't so bad, darling. But it ain't your truth either. I've heard you sing. You got a voice that can stir the soul. You just need to let it out." He leaned back, his eyes still fixed on her, now full of a quiet intensity. "Look, I've told you about fear. Now let me tell you about connecting. When you step on that stage, when that light hits you, you ain't just singing notes. You're singing a story. Every song has one. A feeling, an emotion, you gotta connect to that. Feel it in your bones." He leaned forward again, his voice dropping to that intimate melodic tone. "Then find another face and another. Soon the whole room just becomes a collection of friends. You ain't just a singer, darling. You're a vessel for something beautiful." He picked up his coffee cup and took a long sip. Then, quite naturally, he began to hum a few notes, a gentle, bluesy melody. His humming was pure, rich, effortlessly beautiful. It was the melody of Midnight Serenade. He wasn't even singing words, just humming. But the emotion, the story, was unmistakably there. It was his voice, his inimitable, world-famous voice. Lily Mae stared at him, tears streaming down her face now, not from sadness but from overwhelming awe and a profound sense of privilege. He knew the song, the solo, her fear. He had listened, understood, and now he was giving her the greatest gift imaginable. His wisdom, his belief, and the undeniable truth of who he was. The unmistakable glimpse was no longer a question, but a profound, life-changing revelation. The revelation hit Lily Mae like a lightning bolt. Yet strangely, it settled into her mind with a sense of rightness. Of course it had to be him. The wisdom, the presence, the voice. It all clicked into place. King of rock and roll, the man who had electrified millions, had been sitting across from her in a diner, offering her solace and guidance. The sheer unlikelihood of it was staggering, but she felt a profound gratitude too deep for words. She didn't return to the diner that night. She needed time to process, to internalize his words. She knew Mr. Henderson had given the solo to someone else, but Elvis's advice wasn't just about this one solo. It was about her singing. It was about her fear. The next morning she arrived at rehearsal early. Before anyone else, the stage was empty, quiet, the lights dim. She stood in the center where the spotlight would hit and closed her eyes. "Don't sing the notes, sing the story." His words echoed in her mind. Sing to one person in the audience, then another, until the whole room is just a collection of friends. She took a deep breath and began to sing Midnight Serenade. Not for Mr. Henderson, not for the new understudy, but for herself. She imagined the story of the song, a tale of longing and hope unfolding with each note. She imagined singing to her mother, who had always believed in her, to Sarah, her friend, who had always encouraged her, to the man in the diner, whose kindness had cracked open her despair. The first few lines were still shaky, her voice thin, but she remembered his advice about the fear being juice. She focused on the emotion, on the meaning of the words, rather than the act of singing them perfectly. She pictured her mother's gentle smile, Sarah's enthusiastic cheer. Something shifted. A warmth spread through her chest. Her voice, hesitant at first, found its footing. It gained strength, depth, a resonance she hadn't felt in days. The notes weren't just notes. They were feelings, colors, memories. She wasn't just singing, she was telling. She went through the solo again and again, each time trying to embody the story, to connect with those imaginary faces. There were moments of brilliance where her voice soared effortless and true, and there were moments where the fear still tried to creep in, a cold finger tracing her spine, but this time she didn't let it paralyze her. She acknowledged it, breathed through it, and pushed the energy through her voice. When the other singers and musicians started to arrive, Lily Mae was still in the middle of a powerful rendition of the solo. Sarah walked in, stopped dead, and just stared. When Lily Mae finished the last note hanging in the air, Sarah applauded softly. "Lily," she breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. "You sounded incredible. What happened? You were like a different person." Lily Mae smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I just tried to sing the story, I guess, and not worry so much about the rest." She didn't mention Elvis. It felt too personal, too magical to share. During the full cast rehearsal that day, Lily Mae was back in her backup singer position. The new understudy, while competent, lacked the raw emotion and power that Brenda brought to Midnight Serenade. She sang the notes correctly, but the story was missing. Mr. Henderson looked frustrated, rubbing his temples. Again. "I heard you this morning, Lily Mae," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Sounded like you found something. What was it?" Lily Mae shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Just trying to remember why I started singing, Mr. Henderson, for the love of it." He looked at her thoughtfully. "It was good, very good. I wish—" "No, never mind. We're committed to the new arrangement now. But I'm glad you're finding your voice again." He still seemed reluctant to change his decision, even though Lily Mae could tell he was disappointed with the understudy's performance. The show was only 2 days away, and he hated last-minute changes. Doubt still gnawed at Lily Mae. She had sung well in rehearsal, but it was just her and a few bandmates. The thought of the actual stage, the audience, the blinding lights still made her stomach clench. Could she truly hold on to this newfound courage when it mattered most? She yearned for more of his quiet wisdom, more of that grounding presence. The king's advice had given her a path, but the journey still felt overwhelmingly long. The day of the show arrived, shrouded in a thin layer of Las Vegas dust and Lily Mae's own thick fog of anxiety. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat that echoed in her ears. Even though she wasn't supposed to sing the solo, the mere thought of being on stage, knowing Midnight Serenade was coming, made her sick with nerves. The new understudy had rehearsed, but there was a quiet buzz backst. She wasn't quite hitting it. There was a desperate scramble, a sense of last-minute chaos that made everyone jumpy. Lily Mae had barely slept. She skipped breakfast, her stomach too unsettled. Instinctively drawn by an invisible thread of hope, she found herself walking towards the Lucky Spoon diner. She didn't expect him to be there. He was Elvis Presley, after all, the biggest star in the world. On the night of a major performance, he had better things to do than sit in a quiet diner. But as she pushed open the door, her heart leaped. Sitting in his usual booth, sipping coffee, looking as calm and collected as ever, yet with an unusual intensity in his blue eyes. He looked up as she entered, and a small, knowing smile touched his lips. It was as if he had been waiting for her. "Well, darlings," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble. "Today's the day, isn't it?" Lily Mae slid into the booth opposite him, her hands trembling as she set down her coffee cup. "How did you know?" she whispered, though she knew it was a foolish question. He knew everything, it seemed. He chuckled softly. "Some things you just feel in the air. And besides," he leaned forward conspiratorially, "I make it my business to know what's happening on the Strip. Heard there might be a last-minute change for the midnight Serenade. But Mr. Henderson already put someone else on it, and even if he changed his mind, I don't know if I can do it." The fear... He held up a hand, stopping her words. "The fear's still there. I know it never completely goes away for folks like us, but you learned to make it your friend, didn't you? Turn it into energy." He paused, his gaze intense, piercing. "Now listen to me, darling. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to carry it with you onto that stage tonight." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low, powerful register, filled with a raw, undeniable sincerity. "You got to show them what you got." And I did. I stepped out, and I sang. And when I finished, something magic happened. The fear didn't disappear. He looked directly into her eyes. No sunglasses now, just his clear, deep blue gaze. "And think about why you started singing. In the first place, that pure, joyful feeling of the music moving through you. That's what they want to see. That's what they want to hear." Picked up her hand, his touch warm and firm, a reassuring squeeze. "You connect with the music, you let it wash over you, and you let it flow through you. You give them a piece of your soul, darling, not because you have to, but because you want to. Because that music, that voice, it's a part of you, and it's meant to be shared." He released her hand, a genuine, powerful smile spreading across his face. It was the smile that had charmed millions, but it felt intimately, personally for her. "Don't perform for them," he repeated, his voice a quiet command. "Perform with them. Let the music carry you. You got this, darling. Believe me." He stood up. Then, his presence filling the small diner. "Now go on. You got a show to do, and you're going to be magnificent. I know it." He didn't say goodbye, just a nod, a slight tip of his head. And then he was gone, stepping out into the bright Vegas afternoon, leaving Lily Mae sitting alone, her heart pounding, her mind reeling. The words resonated in her soul, a profound and beautiful blessing. He hadn't just given her advice. He had given her his belief, his experience, his living proof that fear could be transformed. It wasn't just pure gold. It was a key to unlocking her own strength, her own voice. Backstage at the Starlight Revue was a controlled chaos, even on a good night. Tonight, with Brenda still out and the understudy struggling, it was a pressure cooker. Lily Mae's heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, each beat echoing the "You got this, darlin'" from Elvis, a comforting yet terrifying mantra. She was helping Sarah with her costume, trying to keep her hands steady when Mr. Henderson's assistant hurried over, her face pale. "Lily Mae, Mr. Henderson needs you fast." Lily Mae felt a fresh wave of nausea. She knew what this meant. She followed the assistant, her stomach churning, into Mr. Henderson's small office. He stood there looking even more stressed than usual, the understudy beside him, tears silently running down her face. "Lily Mae," Mr. Henderson said, his voice clipped and urgent. "Our understudy is not feeling well. She can't go on. Midnight Serenade is the next big number. You're up. You're singing the solo." The words, though expected, still hit her like a punch to the gut. The world seemed to swim. The fear, the overwhelming, paralyzing fear, rushed back, threatening to engulf her. Her throat tightened. Her breath hitched. But I... she stammered, her voice thin. Mr. Henderson cut her off, his eyes pleading. "Lily Mae, I know it's last minute, but I heard you this morning. You sounded incredible. You have this. The show must go on. The audience out there, they're counting on us." Sarah appeared in the doorway. Having followed them, she rushed to Lily Mae, giving her a quick, fierce hug. "You can do this, Lily. Remember what you told me. Sing for the love of it." Lily Mae tried to take a deep breath, but it felt impossible. The stage, the audience, the spotlight. They were all monsters, waiting to swallow her whole. Her hands were clammy. Her knees felt like water. She remembered Elvis's words. "True courage isn't the absence of fear, but walking right through it. You got this, darling, believe me." "Go, get ready," Mr. Henderson urged, practically pushing her out of the office. 5 minutes to curtain. The music doesn't wait. The next few minutes were a blur. She threw on her costume, her fingers fumbling with the buttons. Sarah helped adjust her microphone, her touch gentle and reassuring. Chaos of the dressing room, the excited chatter of the other performers seemed distant, muffled. All she could hear was the frantic beat of her own heart. "You're going to be amazing," Sarah whispered, squeezing her hand one last time. "Just sing, Lily, sing your heart out." Lily Mae nodded, unable to speak. She walked to the wing of the stage, the familiar scent of dust, old velvet and theatrical makeup filling her nostrils. The orchestra had started the intro to Midnight Serenade. The mournful, beautiful melody filled the air, the familiar notes building, carrying her towards her cue. Brenda's usual lead vocal filled the stage for the first verse and chorus, a recording that covered her absence. Then the music began to swell, building to the bridge, to the dramatic pause, to her moment. The stage manager gave her the signal, "Places Lily." She stepped forward into the blinding glare of the spotlight. For a moment she was utterly paralyzed. The audience, a vast, dark expanse, seemed to stretch into infinity. The lights were a harsh, unforgiving burn. The fear was a living, breathing thing. Wrapping its icy tendrils around her throat, her mind raced a whirlwind of doubt and terror. "I can't do this. I'm going to fail. They'll laugh. I'll make a fool of myself." Then a voice, calm and steady, cut through the noise in her head. "Don't sing the notes. Sing the story." Sing to one person in the audience, then another, until the whole room is just a collection of friends. Let the music carry you. You got this, darling, believe me. It was Elvis. His calm, kind eyes, the gentle curve of his smile, his absolute conviction in her flashed in her mind's eye. He believed in her, and if he believed in her, maybe, just maybe, she could believe in herself. The music reached its dramatic peak, then faded, leaving a silence that felt enormous, heavy, waiting. This was it. Her solo. She closed her eyes for a split second, taking a shaky breath. She pictured his face, Sarah's face, her mother's face. She pictured herself a little girl singing into a hairbrush, lost in the joy of the music. She opened her mouth, and the first note of Midnight Serenade trembled from her lips. The first note was shaky, a fragile thread of sound against the vast silence of the theater. Lily Mae felt the fear like a physical presence, a cold hand gripping her heart. But then she remembered his words. Sing the story. Sing to one person. Let the music carry you. She pictured his face again, his kind, unwavering eyes. She imagined she was singing directly to him, telling him the story of love and loss of longing and hope. She wasn't singing for the thousands of people out there. She was singing for one man who had given her a priceless gift. And something shifted. The fear, instead of paralyzing her, began to transmute. It became a tremor of excitement, a surge of adrenaline that pushed her forward, that lent a raw, emotional edge to her voice. She wasn't just hitting notes. She was pouring her very soul into them. Her voice, initially hesitant, gained strength, richness, and a resonant clarity that filled the entire theater. She let the melody wash over her, let the rhythm guide her. She closed her eyes for a moment, lost in the music, no longer aware of the blinding lights or the vast dark audience. She was simply Lily Mae, singing a story she knew by heart, with a passion she had only just rediscovered. She swayed, gently her hands, instinctively rising, expressing the emotion that surged through her. The high notes were effortless, soaring to the rafters, quiet, melancholic moments were imbued with a tender vulnerability that hushed the room. She was no longer just singing. She was living the song, breathing its every nuance. The crescendo arrived, a powerful emotional climax that built to a heart-wrenching, glorious final note. Lily Mae held it, letting it hang in the air, vibrating with raw feeling, then slowly, gracefully let it fade. Silence. A profound, breathless silence. For a long moment, the entire theater seemed to hold its breath. Lily Mae stood there, bathed in the lingering spotlight, her chest heaving, tears blurring her vision. She felt utterly drained, yet more alive than she had ever been. Then a single clap, then another. And then, like a dam-breaking thunderous applause erupted, sweeping through the theater like a tidal wave. It started as a roar, then swelled into a standing ovation. People cheering, whistling, stamping their feet. Lily Mae opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She saw Mr. Henderson in the wings, his face split in a wide, incredulous grin, giving her a thumbs up. Sarah was beside him, jumping up and down, practically vibrating with excitement. The musicians in the orchestra were smiling, some wiping their eyes. The warmth that flooded her was unlike anything she had ever felt. It wasn't just relief. It was triumph. It was joy. It was the feeling of having walked through the fire and emerged not unscathed, but transformed. She bowed deeply, overwhelmed by the outpouring of appreciation. She couldn't stop the tears, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. Later, the dressing room was buzzing. Everyone rushed to congratulate her, hugging her, praising her voice, her courage. "Lily, that was incredible," Sarah exclaimed, throwing her arms around her. "I've never heard you sing like that. What was it? What changed?" Lily Mae smiled. A secret smile. "I just remembered what I love about music," she said, her voice still a little shaky but clear. "And I had a little help from a very wise friend." She never saw the man from the diner again. She looked for him the next day and the day after. But the Lucky Spoon Diner was always empty of his presence. She saw his name in the newspapers, of course. The king of rock and roll performing to sold-out crowds, electrifying the city. She would always wonder if he had been in the audience that night. If he had heard her, if he had smiled, she never knew for sure. But his words, that pure gold encouragement, were etched into her heart, a permanent guide. He had taught her that the stage wasn't a monster, but a sacred space where she could share her heart. He had shown her that fear wasn't a wall, but a challenge to be overcome. And the greatest gift he had given her wasn't just his advice, or even his belief in her. It was the belief she found in herself. Lily Mae Parker, the backup singer, was no longer terrified to sing her solo. She was a lead, not just in a song, but in her own life, ready to step into the spotlight. Not as an echo, but as a voice, true and clear, singing her own story,